Number one, I was miserable, had my own label, I was depressed, cut all my music ties.
How you got to that place and how you found your way through it.
Yeah, you could say I was burnt. He looked at me and was like, nah, man, it's time. I got to my fuck it point and I said,
Yo, what's up? This is Toru, music producer, entrepreneur, and host of this show, Producer Head. Today, we've got Cryptic One back on the show, and this time he's taking us deep into the story behind Beats Table, his new documentary about the beat scene. We talk about burnout, cooking as a creative outlet, vulnerability, and what it means to capture the stories of producers on film. What's up, everybody? This is Toru, and in a way, so are you. Welcome back to another episode of Producer Head. Today, we have Cryptic One, going to be a little bit different. If you haven't already heard, Crypt has been on episodes 3, 4, 33, and 34. So I really encourage you to go back and check those out. Today, we're going to be talking about a documentary that he made about the beat scene.
Thank you, man. Damn, I've been on here a lot. I feel like I should be paying rent or something. Thank you again for having me. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, man. So I want to get right into it. And because I think the origin story of this documentary is super interesting because it just straight up comes from a place of burnout. Talk about how you got to that place and how you found your way through it.
So this has to go back many years, as most of my stories do. Flashback to 2005, 2006. I had my own label. I had just gotten off of a fairly large US tour. It was like 54 cities in 60 days or something crazy like that. I was burned out from the tour. I wasn't really making much music. And without shitting on anyone, the label that I had signed to, I signed my label to another label for distribution and manufacturing. They weren't really doing what I wanted them to. And I was tied to them for 10 years. So this was the first release. My first solo album was through them. And it didn't do as well as I knew it should have. So at that point, I think I've talked about on this podcast before, I got to my fuck it point and I said, fuck it with music. And I literally just cut all my music ties. I stopped replying to emails. I didn't answer phone calls from people who I knew were music related. I was just really fucking bitter about the music scene and even music itself. Didn't really even listen to music. So I was, you could say I was burnt fuck out. And I didn't touch music for many years. Through that entire, it was like 5 years span before I even got back to doing anything music related. And during those 5 years, number one, I was miserable. I was depressed. Pretty dark period. There was other personal things that happened. Me and the girl I was seeing at the time, that deaded, having issues with family issues, just everything that could go wrong went wrong during those 5 years. And I kind of blamed it on the music. There's a lot more to it than the music. But so through that, I wasn't being creative. And I think it's like the first time in my life that I can remember not having a creative outlet. And at the time, this will age me a little and date me. HD TVs had just come out. I got one. And the problem is none of cable was in HD. There was like 4 or 5 channels that actually showed stuff in HD. And one was like news, one was sports, one was like the, like the do-it-yourself house kind of flipping network, HGTV or something like that. And then the Food Network. So I'm like, out of all those, the Food Network, let's see what this is. I didn't cook. I didn't do anything. I started watching Food Network shows and it's like, oh shit, I could do that. I like food. So I started like watching stuff, taking notes, go in the kitchen, make something. I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty good. And then I did that for a while, like maybe 3 to 6 months, something like that. And then I started to really like get into the creative side of it, like not even watching the shows, just kind of like being in the kitchen, like, what do I have? What can I do? Mixing stuff. And I started to see kind of like the parallels to making music. And it's the same shit as sample-based music. You take all these different ingredients that may not go together and somehow you put them together and make something new out of it. it really filled that creative void. So those years where I wasn't making music poured all my creative energy into cooking and to food, and became a little bit obsessed with it to the point where I was considering going to culinary school and going the chef route, until I talked to my friend who went to culinary school and she was like, if you want to start hating cooking, go to culinary school and become a chef. You're not going to cook like you cook now at home, the joy and love of it. So I steered clear of that. But I don't know if you want to get to the end where the burnout kind of died, but I rediscovered music. Essentially, I got a new computer that had Logic on it. I was like, let me just see if I could still make a beat. I hesitate to talk about it because that beat is still on my YouTube page and it's fucking trash.
Wow, we need the link to that
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah. I think it's like the first thing I posted on my YouTube channel. And yeah, so that was the first beat, and I just uploaded it with some, like, I edited together some like nature footage to it, and then I got a call from, I don't remember if it was a call or an email or a text from one of the Addams Family guys, just catching up because like I everybody off, so I hadn't spoken to any of these guys. They were really good friends. So I hadn't spoken to them for like 5 years, and he was like, "Hey man, you still making beats?" I lied. Yeah. I have some beats. It's like, "Oh, you want to send some?" I sent him some, and he was like, "Oh, dope." And then through him, another Addams Family guy who's a filmmaker, found out I was making beats. He hit me up. He's like, "Yeah, you have any beats that you can send me? I'm working on this documentary." I was like, "Yeah," lying. Made
Yeah.
beat, sent it to him. He's like, "Oh, this is really dope. Can we use this in the documentary?" I'm like, "Sure." "You have any more?" Yeah. Of course. Week later, I spent a week making beats all week. I send him all those. He's like, "Hey man, I really like all of these. Do you want to do the score?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, of course." So that was like what pulled me back into making music, was like pretty much just backing myself into a corner and saying yes to things that I was not really ready to say yes to, and having this kind of deadline and forcing it. And I've been moving forward ever since, musically. And the one thing that I don't know if I took from it or if I just kind of placed it there. I guess I just placed it there, was when I got back into music, I told myself, doing this for the pure love and joy of it. And any time where I feel like the business or anything is stressing me out more than the fun is happening, then I need to take a step back, remember why I do. So that's kind of why I'm just going to say directly to the camera all the people whose emails I may have ignored for the past few weeks, because that's some business shit that I didn't want to deal with. I didn't want to deal with it. Sorry. So that's how I roll now. I try and have fun and enjoy it. And I still do the business stuff. I still love doing the business stuff to some degree. But when it stresses me out, I take a step back. That's kind of the whole burnout and back to it story.
Wow, yeah, interesting. So I guess that initial burnout is how you discover cooking as sort of a parallel creative outlet. And so then how do you get to a place where you're like, okay, and it's interesting that also what pulls you out is not like you find this parallel creative outlet in food, and then simultaneously what pulls you out of like what was a hiatus from music is somebody asking you to soundtrack a beat documentary. So I don't know how much, I mean, it just seems so crazy to bring us to a point where now what brings you to a place where you make your own documentary about beats that is inspired through food?
From that journey through food, I never stopped cooking. I never stopped loving food. I never stopped like paying attention to it and like going to certain restaurants and following chefs and all that. It's a passion of mine. So when Netflix dropped the first season of Chef's Table, I was locked in, and I'd never seen a food show like that. Most food shows are very like, this is what we're going to make today. These are the ingredients you need. This was more about the chefs and real personal stories, and kind of got to the crux of why they do what they do, as far as like love and passion for cooking, for food, the history of what made them start. A lot of it's family, a lot of it's community, a lot of it's all this stuff. And I watched the first episode and I was hooked, and I immediately thought, this is something that is not, it doesn't exist in our space, in the beat space. Like, there needs to be someone to document beat makers' journeys outside of tutorials. Cooking shows, tutorial. That's telling them what your master chain is or how to use a compressor or what they sampled. Like, that's a cooking show. I love cooking shows, but this something else. I feel like Chef's Table could pull anyone into that world because it's just a human story centered around cooking. I know people who've watched it who are not into food like I'm into food and they love it. So I immediately started thinking like, oh shit, why not make something like that for producers and beat makers? And the intention, my intention for making the documentary I made was really to pull people in that know nothing about what it is that we do, and to do that through personal stories. A second caveat, which this is something I've never mentioned, or even really, I don't even think I mentioned it to you in like our emails back and forth, is sports related. I don't really follow too much sports anymore. I used to be heavy into it, but I do follow basketball. I'm a Knicks fan till all my life and forever. My partner, my girlfriend, she did not give a shit about that. She worked in a sports bar for 10 years and didn't give a shit about basketball. I tried to get her into it, no avail. So one day I'm watching, I'm like, hey, babe. I start telling personal stories about the players. Like, yo, this guy, he just lost his mother to COVID. He's going through a hard time. His sister is sick with COVID right now. And look, he's playing through it. And he's like having this game of his life. And she got really into the personal stories. Then I took her to a game. And she's like, looked at them. She's like, oh my God, they're so young. They're kids. They're going through all this stuff. And then like she started slowly now she's a Knicks fan. Like she owns a jersey. We've been to the playoffs. And that also made me start thinking like the beat scene, most of the fans are just other producers. And I've been brainstorming how to change that for a very long time and I can't come up with it. So then when I turned my girl into a Knicks fan, that's kind of like my plan is to turn non-beat heads into fans of the beat scene through getting them to watch a documentary and see personal stories and to get them in a room where they see the show. And yeah, that's kind of the goal. That's kind of what the mindset was going into it. We'll see if that's successful down the line. Who knows where it's going to go? But so far it seems to be working on a very low level because there's only been 2 screenings. But I did get a couple of non-beat heads to come to the second screening and where we showed the film and then they performed afterwards, the people who are in the film. So baby steps, but we'll see where it goes.
So what made you adopt the name Beats Table for this?
Originally the original title was Beat Table because I literally was sampling the concept from Chef's Table. And it was Beat Table with no S at first. And there was a double meaning there because I'm an MC and everything has double meaning. Like most producers I know have beat out a rhythm on a table before. Like that's how I started before I had equipment in the lunchroom. You'd be banging on the table while someone was rapping, beat table. So that was kind of the concept. And then that play on Chef's Table, I figured people would see the parallels because I wanted it to be kind of cinematic like Chef's Table and to tell the stories like Chef's Table. Then one day I was looking at it and it just didn't look right. I looked at it I was actually trying to find the font that they used for Chef's Table. So I had Chef's Table on the screen and then I'm finding it. It doesn't look right without the S. So then when I put the S in, this is after the film was kind of wrapped. It looked better visually, number one. And number two, I was like, Beats Table. And I said, Beats Stable. And like a lot of the film is about how beats help people maintain some sort of stability in their life, emotional life, and just life in general. And then that just kind of clicked. And then as an MC, when you find a triple meaning to something, you're even fucking happier. So that's how I landed on Beats Stable. It's still weird because every time I say it, sometimes I want to say Beats Table. Sometimes I want to say Beat Stable. But yeah, that's how the name came to be.
Yeah, I remember kind of tripping out when I watched it because when the connection with like beating on a table in school came up, I just like immediately got flashback. Like that was like it was like something you had to be able to do in like elementary school. You know what I mean? And it's like so and it's something that I had not thought about in I mean ever. And so when you brought that up in that I was just like, wow, this it's just kind of it's amazing how that seemingly on the surface could really just look like a complete lift, but it really works in such a unique and cool way for us as producers.
Yeah, that was the goal. I wasn't sure if it was going to work because, you know, frankly, I'm from a different generation. I'm a little older. So, like, when I was coming up, it's not like you can make beats on your phone. There was no phone. So, like, if you wanted to make beats in the beginning, you literally had no choice. I wasn't in grade school. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have an iPad or a computer or a drum machine or even know what any of that shit was. Didn't have access to YouTube to see what that stuff was. So, I wasn't sure it would resonate, but then when I did the interviews, when we did the interviews, it's not just me, and that was we kind of threw that question in kind of in the middle of the interviews, just kind of randomly, like in between personal things, just kind of throw it in there just to kind of see their reaction, and all three of them laughed, and I was like, just this laughter of like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that, and like immediately like bringing them back to when they did that and right in that moment when the first person laughed, which was Czars, I was like, okay, it resonates with him. And then when second person, which Staz did it, and then when Nothing New did it, I was like, holy shit, yeah. And then at the last screening, we did kind of little interviews with some of the producers that came to watch the film, and that was one of the questions that we asked, and everyone has kind of had that same sort of laughter, even though they've just seen the film. You would think that they knew that question was coming, but it was still just kind of it was just kind of connecting, just knowing that we all kind of came from that same path. It's like as a beat maker or beat maker that an eventual beat maker, you don't need any equipment to start learning rhythm, and you can just literally find a table and put your fist in your palm and make a drum beat.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was a cool thing that connected us. And yeah, like I said, I wasn't sure it was going to work, but it definitely wound up working. I'm glad it did. It would have sucked if it didn't work. If that's the title of the fucking film.
Yeah, in addition, you mentioned how using the title just kind of because of how it is taken from Chef's Table, that it gives people from the outside an immediate kind of ability to recognize it. And so you've mentioned this desire to spread it because obviously it's going to work and producers are going to be interested. What is the motivation and desire to get this to be seen by people outside of that particular scene or demographic?
At the end, it's really just about growing the community, to pull people into the space. There's another thing that happened recently in the Brooklyn scene. This guy, Chromatic Black, he's a producer now, but he's a photojournalist, and he showed up to a. I haven't spoken to him directly about it. I got this info from Czar, so pardon me if any of this is not 100% accurate, but he went to this beat event called Smoking Beats, and it was Czars was performing, and he just went, and this is his first time going to a beat event, and just kind of fell in love with the scene more as a photographer, like shooting the stuff. And then because of that, he became a producer, and then he wound up getting an article published with those photos about the beat scene in the New Yorker, which is pretty big deal. Just so happens that three people in my film are also in that article. It just showed me, and I got to speak to him recently about it, that we're both kind of on that same path of just kind of wanting to expose the world to our what we're doing in hopes of it growing. It's I see the scene expanding right in front of our eyes. Even at the end of the film, in the credits, it just kind of shows like all the cities and the countries where people are doing this stuff, and it's I've been a part of a few scenes that have kind of bubbled and then blown up on a global scale. And I can see that here. I just don't know how to get it over the edge. So I'm just trying to do my really, and then of course there's also the selfish reasons. Like I like creating stuff. Film was my first love before music. That's what I thought I was going to do. I was going to be a filmmaker first. Music just kind of took over. So like just from a purely selfish creative reason, that's another reason why I wanted to make the film, is like I didn't know if I could do it, and I like challenges, I guess.
What would you say is not Beats Table?
It's not a instruction manual. You're not going to learn how to make beats watching it. As a producer, if you're looking to find out what Nothing News master chain is, you're not going to find that here. You're not going to find out Staz likes to sample. We talked about some of this stuff, but that just didn't end up in the film because that's not what I wanted to make. I feel like that is something, and I'm not shitting on that because I watch those. If there's, I would watch that in a heartbeat. A documentary just all about process and stuff like that, or even on YouTube videos, I watch all that stuff. And all of us producers love to see how other producers we like get the sound that they get. But it's just, I felt like it's been done a million ways, and I know that's not going to pull someone who doesn't know about us into it. My girlfriend doesn't give a shit about your compressor setting.
Yeah, no, there really seems to be this like strong emphasis. Like music just happens to be one of the many things these people have in common. It's really this emphasis on what music is for each of them personally, and really emphasizes this and explores that individually for each of them, as opposed to just like exactly as opposed to the how. It's more the why for each of them.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And I think that was actually literally one of the notes. I have a book that I guess you'd call it a journal. It just says, it still says Beat Table with no S on the cover because that's what I just started. And I just, anytime I had an idea, I write it down, like a physical book, which was an idea I got from the documenting cohort, which I think we'll talk about a little later. And I think on one of the pages it says why, not how, or something. I don't, it's paraphrased, but literally just what you said. And it was just kind of to keep me on track when I was building the questions. When anytime, you know, my girlfriend, she's the one who actually asked the questions, and I kind of told her to some effect, I don't really care how they made things or process or anything. It's really about why. Dig into the whys. Yeah, it worked. It really worked well. Yeah, I can't even explain how well it worked, but there were questions about that stuff. Like I said, it just because I'm a nerd, I'd interrupt and be like, "Oh yeah, what'd you use to make that?" And I'll ask that stuff. But that was, I guess, purely personal. And like, I have all the footage. You know, we interviewed everyone for like 3 hours, to a 10-minute documentary with 3 people in it. So there's tons of footage. But what ended up making it into the movie were things that I felt would touch someone who had no idea. It would touch anyone, people who made beats and people who didn't. Like that was kind of the goal. I wanted to tap into something that for the beat makers, I wanted them to walk away and feel seen. Like, oh shit, someone else uses this shit as therapy or to get through tough thing or you know, like whatever reason, whatever we need to stay stable in life. And I don't think that's really talked about much. It's prevalent in every creative community. Like no one starts making beats for money. I mean, maybe that shouldn't say no one. There are some people who do, and not knocking them at all. But like, I think we've had a conversation. Like at the end of the day, it's art, and art has to really come from a real place. And yeah, I don't know. I'm getting off on a tangent, but that's what I wanted to dig into. I kind of felt like everyone felt the same way, but I wasn't sure until you're in the room and you start asking the questions and you see people answering the questions and they're going deeper than you even expected. And yeah, it was after the first interview that I knew. I was like, yeah, this is going to work for sure.
To any of the people listening, any of the 3 people featured, if you're listening, go ahead and drop your master chain in the comments. And I do want to ask you, how did you decide on these 3 people? So the documentary features Staz, Zars, and Nothing New, who's been on this podcast. So go back to episodes 9 and 10 if you're interested in that. But yeah, can you talk to us a little bit about how you decided on the, because I mean, as anybody who follows the show at all knows, there are a lot of producers in New York. So yeah, you have a lot to choose from. How did you land where you landed?
I landed initially, it was like, I wanted to showcase people that I knew. They weren't people that I knew that well. That was also kind of part of it by design. I didn't want to choose like my close friends who I knew all about. I wanted to learn, and I wanted to be surprised. So that was part of it. All 3 of them, I had done events with all 3 of them at some point. Not the same event, but So I had talked to them before. I had to like their music, like that. That's kind of one of the parts, and I felt like they all had a unique sound, and none of them sounded like each other or like anyone else, which that also was kind of important. And at the end of the day, there were reasons for each of them. Like Czars, I just thought he was a really interesting dude. Um, and his sound, he doesn't sound like no one sounds like Czars. Like he just has it's I don't I hate the word abstract, but abstract, just different, unique, but still very rooted in hip hop. And he's a character. Like watches Instagram stories and like clearly super smart, hilarious. And you could tell he has a lot to say. So that was Czars with nothing new. I knew he was a really smart dude as well. I knew that he was very connected with himself in a way that like seemed very wise, So like that kind of drew me to him. And then I honestly I watched the podcast, your episode with him, and that made me even want to dig further. So that was that, and Stas was another one. Like initially, I was like, who's going to be the third? And I had a short list, and Stas was near the top, but I wasn't sure if she would do it. It's like I was cool with her. She'd been to a couple shows. I've been to a show that she's thrown, but I just wasn't sure because I didn't know her that well. When she said yes, it was just kind of like, okay, let's see where it goes. And then she lives out in Long Island, so it's kind of a trek to go out there. So we went out there, and I was still kind of like I wasn't sure, but then after 5 minutes of asking the questions, I'm like, yeah, this is perfect. And she kind of balances it. None of the three stories that we follow with each of them are the same at all. They're all similar in some sense, but I feel like you get something very different from each of those stories. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to dance around the stories because it's only a 10-minute documentary short. So like I feel like if I tell any of the stories, I'm like giving away 30% of the movie for when you get to see it. Yeah, that's kind of how I landed on those three. And I guess we didn't talk about this. I mean, the initial purpose or the initial format, I should say, it wasn't a film. It wasn't a documentary short. It was a series. And I still kind of want to make it a series. So I went into it knowing that it was going to end up being a documentary short, but I ended up shooting it as if it was going to be a series. So that's why there's so much content.
Yeah, I mean, I know I don't. Without giving too much away, is there a moment or experience that kind of sticks out to you from it?
Oh yeah. There's a few, but specifically the Czar's story, which again I'm not going to give away too much, but he dealt with some grief and music helped him get through it a bit. But when we were shooting that, he was the first interview we did. So this was kind of like still not knowing if this is going to work, like what's happening, still trying to figure it out. But when he's told this story about a loss he had, the room got really quiet. And I don't know, I've seen like the cliche moments where a director talks about the moment where something happens and everyone's like teared up, and I'm like, I hear about that stuff, but like this is like literally happened. Like everyone was like after he finished the story, I literally turned off all the cameras. I was like, listen, dude, first of all, thank you for sharing. Sorry you had to go through that. Thank you for sharing. We do not have to use any of that. I understand it's an extremely personal story. And yeah, we just had to take a breath. And he immediately was like, nah, I'll never forget what he said. He's like, he looked at me and he was like, nah, man, it's time. He wanted to tell this story. So I think it was on some levels healing for him to get that out. And yeah, I can't even like express the awe of like the bravery it is to like, it's hard to deal with that sort of shit on a personal level, one to one with someone who but now you got like me, my boy, Jamal, who was part of the film crew, my girlfriend Felly, his boy is there. I don't know if he knew the story. His girlfriend's there, and like he's just telling this story. Cameras pointed at him from different angles and lights on, and like that's a level of bravery that most don't have. I don't have that level of bravery. And yeah, that was a moment where it was tough, even just editing it, going back and editing it, like watching the thing a million times and like a second out here, a breath there, and every time I would go back to edit that like emotionally. And so yeah, that was the moment that stands out more than anything. I think it's also the moment that stands out in the film more than anything. Definitely making it that was like it was. I hate to be so dramatic about it. It was kind of a life changing moment just to like be in the room while that's being expressed. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to acknowledge, I shared the same experience, and that part is, I was watching it with my girlfriend, and I looked over at her, and she was just crying, and
Yeah,
I was definitely choked up, and it was super brave and a huge gift to all of us to share a story like that.
yeah, man. Shout out to Zars, man.
Yeah, I mean, big shout out to him, and yeah, I really appreciate it. I know that many people listening to this will watch it and feel similarly and have their, it's going to make you think of your own life in some kind of way when you see that moment.
For sure.
I guess, with that, when you had that moment, to what extent does that make you think about the inherent value of this project, or maybe what you want to do next with it? Because here you are, first time through doing this, making this short form thing, and you're stumbling upon these like very rich moments, that really, I think, accomplish exactly what you described earlier, which is to really just offer a purely human thing, regardless of like kind of what the underlying context is. Are you experiencing any kind of inspiration or expansive kind of idea about where you could potentially take this as a result? Because I think you really quickly, that moment is evidence of really quickly finding a super like universal human kind of moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of thankfully that was the first interview that I did. It's the last one shown in the film, but it's the first one we shot, and from there it kind of just I won't say it steered the other interviews, but I kind of knew what we were digging for, so to speak. Just a really personal moment that somehow music helped people get through, and that became kind of like, well, when I do this as a series, everyone's got to have a moment like that, or else it's not beat stable. And I think everyone does have a moment. If you're an artist, like I don't know, I pour my emotion into this shit. For me, it's usually darker emotions. I don't really make happy music. When I'm happy, I'm probably not like trying to express that through music. I'll express it other ways. But when I'm in a dark place, or I'm trying to get through some shit, or you know, most my favorite stuff is the breakup songs over the love songs. Like that's my personal preference to listen to. So like that moment, yeah, it definitely steered the rest of it and kind of opened me up into like I guess it was a proof of concept. And I tell you, like when I was shooting, I'd show. I hate to use film words because I'm not a filmmaker in my mind still, even though I've made a film. But like dailies, which is you.
By the way, I think imposter syndrome is with Crip is episode 3, just in case anyone's going. But anyway, continue.
No, we'll get to some more imposter syndrome stuff related to this film in a few, but yeah. So like I was showing dailies to the cohort, and when I showed them some of the czars, the first rough cut, it was like a 8-minute cut. Like they're like, you just need to do a whole documentary on it. It was that impactful to this room of experienced filmmakers, which was kind of intimidating for me personally, but I knew it was going to work because I knew the content was just so strong. Regardless of like filmmaker errors, it's like it doesn't matter. It's kind of to relate it to musicians. It's like if you have a dope ass beat, the mix does not. It's not going to destroy a dope beat if your mix isn't or your mastering isn't great. Like a dope, it's going to shine through no matter what. So, sidetrack, I try and tell producers to not worry about that shit as much as they do. I get it. We all want a certain sound and what have you. And with filmmakers, you want a certain look and the lighting to be right and the sound to be perfect, etc. But like at the end of the day, it's the story that matters in film, and at the end of the day, it's the music that matters in music. So, short break for advice. Get out of your own way. Let the music or the story speak for itself.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Remember, Producer Head grows thanks to listeners and supporters like you. So if something here resonates, take a second to let us know by following, liking, subscribing. Your support means everything. By subscribing and sharing, you help us grow the Producer Head community, which allows us to continue bringing you incredible conversations just like this one, and opens the door to even more exciting guests in the future. Let's keep building this together. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point just in terms of the core idea. Is the core idea of something that's like truly of interest to you? and are you interested in exploring that? Because some of the other stuff is, like you said, it's all important, but it is kind of more technical in nature and becomes it kind of has more to do with editing than it does with the creation in a sense. What I did want to ask you is kind of in this, because you mentioned how the interview process changed having that initial interview with Czars. So what I'm curious about too is I'd imagine that you entered the making of this and the production of this with a certain kind of process in mind, with an interview set in mind. And I'm wondering, to what extent did that maintain kind of fixed, and to what extent were you like, did you just have to throw things out? Was it a combination of those things and you just kind of were improvising as you went?
I overplanned, and then, all right, from the technical standpoint, everything got better as time went on. When I watch it, Czars was the first one. The lighting wasn't great. Like, there was a fucking light stand dead center in one of the shots that I fucking still kick myself about to this day. No one else notices it. It's one of those things, but like, everything's better exposed in the later ones. The color is better, and like, so that was just kind of a learning process. Like, we didn't get into this, but I had a really short time window to get it done. So it's like shoot, then edit. Yeah, so it's just kind of this process of do it, look at it, like, oh shit, that could be better. Take a mental note. Next time, next shoot, I'm like, okay, let's set up the lights how I should have set it up the first time, and each time got better. And that goes with everything. The questions pretty much stayed the same. It was just kind of like the follow-up questions got better as time went on. I don't know if this is interesting to talk about or not, but how the questions came up, it did a lot of research on Chef's Table, like how the questions they asked and how they came up with them. And there's a format called the Hero's Journey. I don't know if you're familiar with it. So it's similar to like a 3-act structure kind of thing, but it's way more in depth. So there's like 12 steps to the hero's journey. So then I took down those 12 steps and kind of crafted questions around the hero's journey, knowing that I wasn't going to be able to fit all of it in a 3-minute segment, basically. But that's what I used to hopefully pull personal stories out, and it seemed to work. But yeah, it was a lot of it was planning, but then nothing ever goes as you plan it. And that's one of the things I had to learn about filmmaking, is that you had to fucking figure it out on the fly a lot of times. Like, there was a time when a battery died, and I guess I didn't charge the backup batteries and had to switch to shooting on my phone and Blackmagic camera app for the last part of an interview. A lot of problem solving, a lot of begging people let me come back and finish an interview or shoot B-roll or things like that. A lot of faking B-roll. I'll say that now, is that, like, I'm like, I didn't get enough B-roll as ours. Like, okay, I have records here. I'll get close-ups of a record shot and zooming, and they're my records, like, things like that. A lot of asking people for footage. Like, I asked Donut Lounge, this just pure luck. I asked them for footage. Armani, shout out to Armani. He was like, yeah, man, of course. So I got performance footage of all 3 performers performing at Donut Lounge. And there's this one moment where, when Nothing New is performing, Staz is in the audience in the front, and you see her, and then the camera pans up to Nothing New. So that was just kind of this cool way to transition from them in the film. And then another part, Staz is introducing Czars because he raps on one of her songs. So I got to use that as a way to connect them all throughout the film. It's transitions. Because oddly, when I'm making the film, it felt like making a beat set. So I'm like, how do I get from this song to that song? There's a transition. So now it's, how do I get from Staz's story to Nothing New story? And I luckily had footage that kind of intersected those.
Let me ask you to speak a little bit more, because I think the context in which you kind of were inspired, pushed, and gave yourself a deadline to make this documentary is really interesting. Can you speak a little bit to that experience?
Yeah, so you have to go back a little bit to November of last year, of 2024. Actually, before I even go there, there's a nonprofit organization called Brick Arts Media here in Brooklyn. And what they do is they kind of support artists, musicians, filmmakers, etc. It's a physical building. They have classes there. It's super cheap. It's anyone in Brooklyn. If you're not using this, you're out of your mind, because they have classes for everything from like DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, After Effects. They have a field recording class for like $150 where you go and you're using cinema grade cameras and learning sound and lighting and all this other stuff. And then when you complete these courses, you get certified to use their equipment. You can go rent that shit for free. So incredible resource. So every now and then I'll just kind of look at their site and classes upcoming, and I'm like, all right, I can take that class. I want to learn After Effects. I don't feel like digging through YouTube videos. I like having sometimes a professor that I can ask questions or like try something and show them, like, and show me a better way to do it. I learn better that way. So one day I saw that they had this thing called a documentary intensive, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I looked it up, and I'm like, oh shit, it's not class. It's like something you have to apply for. So it's a long application. Why do you want to do this? What's your idea for a film? I already had the idea as a series. I was like, I wasn't thinking of it in terms of film until I read that. I'm like, oh, let me pitch it to them and see if I can get accepted. So I sent some samples of footage, like some content that I shot for Instagram, and I did a short documentary for my girlfriend who's a singer-songwriter before one of her performances from maybe 6 years ago. So I sent all that stuff. I forgot about it. And then I looked up like, oh, the deadline where they say they're going to, tell you if you got in is coming up. So I emailed them and they're like, oh, we're delaying it a couple weeks. I'm like, all right. So a couple weeks go by. I get an email saying I did not get accepted. I'm like, all right, cool. No big deal. So Beats Table just kind of went to the back of my mind as one of the millions of ideas that I have that maybe it'll get made, maybe it won't. My plan was to use this thing to tell me like, okay, this is supposed to happen and force my hand a little bit. So flash forward a few months, I get an email saying, hey, do you still want to do this? We had a spot open up. And I was like, yeah, sure. They're like, oh, great. Class starts tomorrow. I was like, wait, what? I'm not ready mentally for this.
Bluff call,
like,
dude.
oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, shit. So I looked at my schedule. It landed at a perfect time for me. It was Thursday night. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this thing. I guess I'm doing this. And I had no idea what I'm getting into. I go to the first day of class and it's in person. And I'm just sitting there. It's like me and 12 other filmmakers and an instructor, and he's talking. And first thing they do is everyone goes around the class introducing everyone. Everyone's like, oh yeah, I went to NYU Film School. I worked on this documentary. I had one award here. I've been working at like all these people are giving all these film accolades, and I'm like, oh shit. Like then they come to me. I'm like, yeah, my name's Ian. I make beats, basically. And I'm like, yeah. So out of the 13 people there, 11 of them were filmmakers of some sort, and one was me, and the other one's a photographer. So she already had like the eye for it or whatever. So that's when imposter syndrome really starts to kick in. You're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. It just clicked to me. And then next class, we're talking about pre-production. And I'm like, everyone else is just like chilling. They're not taking notes. I'm like, I don't know what any of this shit means. Like, I got to take notes. I'm like, and I really started to get stressed about it. Like, I don't know if I could do this. So basically the class is 4 months. And, I didn't start shooting until I'd say almost 2 months in. So really from shooting till final edit was maybe like two months and 2 weeks, so like 2.5 months, which is a very fucking short time, especially when it's not the only thing you're doing. Like this was like, I don't know if you remember my Fuck It, It's Free February promotion, which was a lot of fucking work to do. That was when I started shooting that same month. So it was like, I'm doing that. I have an actual other job that pays the bills. I'm doing that, start shooting a documentary, trying to plan it, pre-production, or try and do all this stuff. Mind you, the flip side of it is they offer you all these resources. Like we have these other students who are like colorists and editors and all this other stuff. And I didn't make use of any of those resources because I'm an idiot. So I decided to do everything myself, basically. Because I knew what I wanted and I didn't know how to express it to anyone. And I didn't want the reason for it to not get done to be because I relied on someone and they couldn't pull through. Like if I had a longer time or I had no deadline, sure, I could rely on people and let them take their time, but no one's going to care about it as much as I do. Which I do not recommend any filmmakers or anyone to approach it that way. Filmmaking, I found out very quickly, is something where you need a team and you need to trust them to get their shit done. Lesson learned. That's basically where the short time period is. So I guess I should explain what a cohort is. It's basically a bunch of filmmakers get together, they bounce their ideas off each other. People say, "Hey, what about this? Maybe you should do this." Oh yeah, and it's just a group of people who get together and everyone's making their individual films, and we help each other out throughout the process, which was extremely beneficial. It helped me get over the imposter syndrome a little bit, especially when I started showing footage and to see how floored everyone was. And, in the beginning, I expressed all the doubts that I had. I was pretty vulnerable about that. I wanted people to get really personal on screen. That's what I told them. And I'm like, this is a hip hop community where that's not often what people want to do. And on top of that, they're producers. So they're not people who express themselves through words very often on camera. Like, just even getting half the producers to get on Instagram and show their face and talk to the camera is tough. So to get them to open up is going to be really tough. And I'm telling my class this, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's going to be tough." So when I showed them the first footage, they're like, "You did exactly what you set out to do." So it was reassuring in that, quell a little bit of the imposter syndrome. But yeah, I mean, I can't thank Brick Arts enough for the opportunity, but mostly for me, what I needed more than anything was someone else to put a deadline on it, or else because making a film, even though it's a short, it's a lot to do, and I wouldn't have completed it if someone didn't force my hand on some level.
How can you describe to what extent, if at all, your mindset changed? Because I think anybody listening can relate to, like, I'm one out of 12 people who literally is on paper like the least qualified or the least experienced, maybe is a better way to say that. And at the same time, you're in this incredible position because you're like, literally everybody here has a world of knowledge to teach me, you know? And so also, like, to what extent was that like, wow, I'm kind of a kid in a candy store in a way where it's like I can ask questions to people who know all this stuff and I have a lot to learn and steal. And what was that like?
It was an incredible experience. I think not knowing as much of them was a little bit freeing, and it kind of reminds me of being, a sample-based producer to some extent. Like I know people who are incredible musicians, and it's kind of that same feeling of like, oh, I'm not really a musician. I don't play an instrument per se. I mean, I could play out a bass line, play a little bit of chords on the keys, but I would never call myself, a musician in that sense. And I think that just frees me up to do shit with samples that other people wouldn't do. And you put me in that room with these filmmakers who they were taught to do it the quote unquote right way. I probably broke a lot of rules they would never because they learned how to do this. And I think there's a beauty in breaking rules because you don't even know there are rules. I mean, for me, I think back to Wu Tang, like nothing sounded like them before them, and half of it had to be because they didn't know what the rules were. So fuck rules. Like I'm just gonna do what feels right. All of this shit is to express what you're feeling in some way, and I think the lesson that I learned or relearned or continue to relearn is that there's no formula, man. Just sometimes you just got to do what feels right and see what happens. I'm sure there are things, parts of my stuff that are overexposed or underexposed that would make like a film professor fucking lose their hair and want to fail me from their class. But at the end of the day, I had a scene in my film that made people cry. That's way more important than exposing the skin properly so the skin is the right color, So I think it was a lot of that. And I'm definitely not taking away from all the people who are learned filmmakers because all of their every film in the class was, pretty impressed with the talent there. But I learned a lot from them, and I think in some ways they probably learned some things from me, just to like not be so rigid with what they learned in school.
I think it goes back to what we were saying before, which is just sort of without all of the technical window dressing of it, just what is your idea and can you get that idea down? And, I give you a lot of credit for watching this and in this conversation. you really had clarity around what that idea was and you committed to communicating that. And I think that's why you ended up where you did. You know what I mean? And I think that's what most people will remember in watching, I think, and so I think that is, like there's always room to kind of play and mess with sort of, the more technical aspects of it and kind of make aesthetic choices or artistic choices accordingly in how you present it. But I think to really have prioritized connection and communication of universal human experience, having committed to that prioritizes connection above all else. And I think at the end of the day, that is that. And so what I'm curious is now having done that and approach beats from, in a sense, a non-musical perspective and a like a super in-person human interview perspective, as well as a visual perspective in film. To what extent now does, like, when you get back in the studio and you think about making music in different ways, how do you now reapproach it or think about those?
That's a good question. I'll tell you when I make my first music. I haven't made any music since the film. I unfortunately, maybe I needed a break from it, but I haven't touched it. I haven't not. I mean, I performed a few things. It's definitely There's no way it's not going to change me to some extent. I'm thinking about things a little bit differently, just in the sense that I realize how much more important that connection and emotion is than the technical side. So I'm hopeful that I'll lean back a bit from the technical side. I'm still going to do the technical side. I'm not going to lie. I love the technical side too, but feeling an emotion first. Even at my last show, there's a beat that I play often that, it just feels right. It wasn't hard to make because it's almost like a straight loop. This sample is just there's a drum break, which is it's chopped up a little, so it's not totally not creative. And then like Polly, our mutual friend, he plays organs over it, and that's my favorite beat to play. And it's the beat that everyone comes up to me afterwards and gives me props on that beat. And if I thought of it purely from a technical standpoint on how it was made, I would think it was the worst thing in my set. And I think that's another one of the things that I want to change about the producer community. And I don't know if it's even possible, is that I don't want to make beats for producers. Like I hope they like it too, but like I want to make beats that the average person is going to say that's dope. I like that, you know? Um I think very often we get trapped in this. I know I do, in that, like, oh man, I hope people are, the producer community is liking the sound that I did. I wonder if they hear the saturation that I put on. Like, no, only we give a shit about that shit. No one has ever walked up to me after a show and be like, yo, what you did with that snare, yo, where you cut the lows on that one snare at the end of the 4 bars, and then it goes into, like, no one. They're like, yo, that made me feel a certain way, or that shit got me so hyped. Like that's the goal, is some sort of human connection. And I hope that the producer community starts to pull more into that direction. I know a lot of us are there already, but I think we focus a little too much on the really hyper technical side of things. And the sooner that we stop trying to impress each other and start trying to like make people feel something, I think we'll all be a little bit better off.
Yeah, so with that, can you also maybe speak to, I feel like it's a little connected, just the mental health benefits of just making music, period, or having some sort of creative outlet, period, in exploring a new medium for yourself, right? I'm wondering also, maybe did it open up doors to, now there are other things that you want to explore outside of film, or maybe you just want to go deeper into film now?
Right now, I think I want to go deeper into film. I still really want to make this a series. Kind of in the process of pitching it to, submitting it to film festivals, which that's a whole other fucking animal, which I'm not sure I even want to do, but everyone's suggesting that I do. It's kind of this battle within myself of like, well, I made this thing. I want as many people to see it as possible. Film festival seems like the logical route to maybe get funding to make it into the series and do all this other stuff. But then there's like the flip side is, I don't know, most people don't know this because I didn't know this shit. I made a film, and then I start looking into how to submit to film festivals and find out that if you put it on YouTube or Vimeo or just online in general for general consumption, that pretty much disqualifies you from most film festivals. So I'm talking to everyone who's in my DMs asking when they can see it online. That's why it's not online. And that's pretty fucking frustrating because although I made this film to pull people from the outside in, I still want the community that I'm a part of to see this. And it's really frustrating that they can't see it. So the battle right now is like, how can I do the film festival thing, which is a long, drawn out process? Or do I say, fuck the film festival thing and just figure out a way to let our people see it and then see if someone else sees it and funding happens after that? So it's this battle. I have ideas. I came up with the idea of like finding all the beat communities across the world, across the country, and see who would be willing to show it and kind of do like a tour of like a film tour, different across the US, playing with the idea of doing something like that. Then the flip side is I put a lot of work into this and I'm like, what if the film festival thing happens and that's the opportunity that gets me to get it to a wider audience? So again, I don't remember what the question was, but yeah, it's just kind of at this crossroads where I don't know what to do.
The other piece is around the mental health piece, right? Because I think there is also like, I think, again, without giving too much away, I feel like there is a common thread among like, basically like I do this period, right? Like I make music period because of in and of itself, there's just inherent value in making the music. And all of these people have you've expressed like they all have their different forms of success musically. And so I was wondering if I feel like including that throughout is a really intentional choice. So I'm curious if you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that was also kind of just a personal thing. Just going in, that's been my experience. Like if I look back to the worst 5 years of my life, it was the times that I was not making music. Although food kind of filled a little bit of that hole, it wasn't the same. Like there's something, the cooking of food, the creative process is one thing. Maybe if I started like giving that food to people besides myself, so that I could transfer that energy and that emotion um, to someone else, it would have had the same effect. But music, it's like making the music is one sort of therapy, and then like feeding the music to other people and it affecting them is kind of like the other thing that helps my mental state. So yeah, it was very intentional to include that and to kind of craft the questions in a way to pull that out of people because I don't know anyone personally doesn't make music for those reasons. You know what I mean? Like, so I know there are people out there who just make music just for, I don't know, shits and giggles or for a paycheck, but I'm sure at some point it's still, even for them, started as a way to heal. And I think music's been doing that forever. It's not new. Like, music makes you feel something. Like, try and watch your favorite film and imagine they remove every piece of music from your, like, you're missing 80% of the emotion. Like a horror film, when they have that fucking eerie music going, if you put some happy music to the same dark alleyway, it completely changes the way it makes you feel. So yeah, I mean, from the start, that's what the film was. That's what the series was. That's kind of how my life has been. And I guess in some ways it was like I'm going into it blind. Like one of the things that someone said to me after the last screening was like, I've known all these guys and gals, say guys in general, but in the film, but I never knew any of those stories. I've known them for years. And that kind of hit me like we're all going through the same shit, but no one talks about it. And that was kind of an immediate proof of concept of like, okay, we have to give this part of us a voice. And yeah, it's to help us heal in just talking about it. And then it helps other heal just seeing them relate to it. So yeah, I hope that speaks to the mental health side of it. But yeah, it was always the intention, and that was kind of like super rewarding to see it kind of play out. That's the other thing. I mean, I guess it's like music. You never know how someone's going to react. I know how I was when I watched the final edit of it and how I felt about it. But then when you're sitting in a screening room of like 300 people and you're watching it with an audience and like you have no idea what these people don't know anything about the scene, this culture. Maybe they don't even create anything. Like maybe they're not going to relate to it. But then like you show it, and people coming up to you, hundreds of people coming up to you afterwards saying how much it affected them, and that shit. I don't know. It just feels good to like people, I guess, in a real small way. That's all I got.
So yeah, I kind of want to wind this down a little bit, talking about the community aspect, also with like a little bit of a lens through vulnerability, which I don't think gets mentioned enough in my opinion. And I think this is a really cool opportunity to talk about it, because I think what's inherent in this film, right, is just a sense of community. So being a participant in the form of performing, but as you mentioned, like in the Nothing New footage, Staz is up front at the show, right?
Yeah.
Like being somebody who is truly a fan and a supporter of other people, even if you're not in the spotlight, right? To both be somebody who puts in as a performer and who gives back as a ticket buyer, as a supporter, and as a fan, and also to not necessarily do that for the sake of quote unquote networking or to advance a particular agenda. And I think like how vulnerable these community members are with you as a member of the same community, and so I say all that. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because obviously, like as you mentioned, you've known these people for years. You didn't do it, but when all of this started to come together as something possible for you to make, it becomes pretty quick. Like, okay, I know that there's a short list of people that I want to reach out to right away. And how also to like, you're doing this in service of a project, but also the project is in service of principles and values and the community as a whole. So can you speak to all of that?
I think it just comes from being a good person. Like I think back to the situation that happened. I threw an event at a brewery. And you remember what the event was called, Ubiquitous, with my homie Pays Infinite. And we started doing sound check. Everything sounded good. And first performer comes up and the sound system just dies. No sound. We have one monitor on stage that has sound. So we turn that towards the audience, start playing. Nothing new comes in. He's like, yo, what's going on in sound? I'm like, yo, shit just died. We tried to troubleshoot it. He's like, yo, I'll go get my shit. He jumps in his car, drives home, lives in another section of Brooklyn, comes back with his speakers, his subwoofer, hooks it up. We have a show. I say that all to say that like this is how this community, a lot of the people in this community are. It's just if there's something that we can do to help, as long as it doesn't like completely like derail ourselves, certain people are going to do it. And that's how I roll. Clearly, that's how Nothing New rolls. And I just feel like a lot of people will, if you give them the opportunity, and vulnerability is a real good word in the sense because when you're like that, you're kind of opening yourself up to something, right? And I used to always look at vulnerability as a weakness, and now it's a superpower. It's the difference between people who don't know how to make a film and put themselves in a room where probably shouldn't be and make a film that they're proud of. It's what makes people put music out. I know tons of musicians who are incredibly talented, probably more talented than I am, that I've known them for 30 years and they still haven't put anything out because there's something about them that they're not willing to put themselves in that vulnerable position. So like in the community, I think it's more of a personal thing. Like I've always been someone who's, I don't want to say open to it because it's always terrifying, but like always willing to go through that terror, to open myself up to probable pain and discomfort in order to either express myself or move a ball forward or to try something that maybe I'm a little scared of. And I try and surround myself with people who operate that way too. And it's not kind of a knock on people who don't operate that way because, like I said, it's scary. It's always something good that happens from it. And even if something bad happens from it, that's good too because you learn from it. And yeah, I just feel like that was one of the words that came up when I was looking for who I wanted to interview. I was like, who do I think would be willing to be vulnerable? And it's people who I saw either be vulnerable online or they were vulnerable me in some way in person. And I was like, yeah, those are the people who are going to be willing to go there on camera. And it goes beyond the interviews. It just goes who these people are. Like Staz had us. We did a show for her birthday in the Bronx. I went out to the Bronx. I did my beat set, and like she did this thing that like I'd never seen anyone do. That's hosting a beat show before. She gave us like little gift bags, and every performer got a little gift bag that had like printed out version of the flyers that she made for each of us for the show. It had like some other things in there, like some incense, and gave is each a vinyl that she bought with us in mind, a record. And I was like, to me, that's a sign of being vulnerable because like no one's ever done that shit before. Like you don't know how people are going to react to it or whatever, but it was also like a really dope gesture. And like, I don't know, those are the people I kind of want to surround myself with. And luckily enough in the Brooklyn beat scene, there's a lot of people like that. And I think the people that aren't like that, I think there's some of that inside. They just haven't gotten to that point where they're ready to express it. So yeah, shout out to you for bringing up the word vulnerable. I'm glad that shines through in some aspects because like that was definitely a word that in that book of mine on many pages is just the word vulnerable. Be vulnerable and surround yourself with people who are willing to be.
Yeah, man. I mean, it really does shine through this. And I know everybody listening is going to be like, where can I watch this thing? And so hopefully we can figure out a way to make this happen. But
Yeah.
man, I mean, that's all I have. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, I mean, yeah, I want to tell people to watch the film. You watch the trailer, I guess. I'm really considering trying to figure out a way to do an online screening that doesn't affect my chances of film festivals. So if it'll be like a literally like it's happening at 8 p.m. on this day. You watch it and then I pull it offline somehow, or I'm sure there are sites that have like a paid firewall or something. I'm not going to make it expensive. And one other thing I just want to express that I've made $0 from this. People seem to think that money just showers on you when you have a film that had this big screening and all this other stuff. I've spent money on this fucking film. Every dime so far that I've made, like from one of the screens that I throw, I charge people, and that was really just to break off the people who are in the film with something because I can't. The film doesn't exist without them, as far as I'm concerned. And I just felt like their time and their like willingness to be that vulnerable on film and be shown in front of however many people deserve some sort of monetary reward. Not the right word, but something. So if anyone ever sees me charge for it online, I'm not trying to get a Ferrari. I'm just trying to break off people who helped with the film and to maybe put a little bit of the money that I spent back in my pocket. So yeah, when we ink the deal with Netflix, then I'll get the Ferrari. But like independent film is probably worse than independent music as far as like the people getting. So ain't no money in this shit, to sum that up. That's what I want people to know. Beats Table, it's really a film about people and how they deal with their shit. If you can relate to that, hit me up because like I said, I'm making this a series eventually. Like that's still 100% the goal. And actually no, don't reach out to me and say you want to be in it. I'll find the people because I don't want anything manufactured. I don't want people to watch it and be like, oh, I need a story like that and start thinking about it that way. I just want it to come from a real genuine place. So don't hit me. I'll find you. But expect that there will be more episodes. And one last thing I do want to say is, like I said, I have every interview was more than 2 hours. I think Nothing New beat everyone because he's a talker. I think his interview was like 3.5 hours. I went back 2 days to shoot with him. So there's going to be bonus content that is not going to be in the film. So if nothing else, the Beats Table Instagram, check that out because I'm going to drop some exclusive clips there at some point. I could tell you what the Instagram handle is, but I can't remember because it's so new to me. I think it's Beats Table Doc.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, we'll pull that down and make sure it's in the show notes so everybody can follow along. I definitely encourage everybody to follow along here with what's going on and how to see it. I mean, my only complaint is that it's the only thing that exists and it's short. So
It is short.
we're all eagerly. I know it's a lot of work, but I'm sure I'm not alone in saying we're eagerly ready for more of this.
I'm happy to hear that. Oh, can I just say one more thing? The reason why it's 10 minutes is because my hands were tied. Like literally it had to be 10 minutes to be in the documentary cohort. I went over that by 14 seconds and heard a little bit of shit about that, but they let it slide. So I feel like when I say to people I made a documentary, they assume it's like, 90-minute feature length. Is not that. So if you sit down to watch it, don't blink because you might miss some shit. Be like, oh, what the fuck? The credits are rolling. I just went to the bathroom. Like, yeah, you missed the whole film. So it's short, but it feels weird to say this about a piece of art I created, but it's powerful. I still, when I watched it at the last screening, I still got a little choked up. And I looked around the room and everyone's choked up. It fucking hits, man. You never hear me talk about anything I create that way, but it touches the emotional points that I wanted it to touch, and I wasn't sure if it would, but seeing it in a room full of people a couple of times made me realize that I did it with a lot of help. But I think people who watch it will get what I intended. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah, man. I mean, in my opinion, man, you should be proud. And I really thank you for making it. And I really do. I'm excited that it's just the beginning. I think it's just very clearly an artifact of your dedication to music in the first place and your appreciation for the people that make it. And I really do. And, not completely dissimilar to this show and just wanting to just spotlight those people and the things behind all the things that we appreciate. And so, may this be the first of many, man.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you letting me talk about this, man. And when it's out there, people, please go see it. And shoot me a comment and let me know what you liked or didn't like or anything. I'm open to it all.
Absolutely, man. And once again, if you haven't heard if this is the first time you're hearing from Crypt, please go back episodes 3, 4, 33, and 34. We get into a whole lot around creativity, imposter syndrome, atomic habits. I mean, we really cover a lot of ground together.
Yeah,
so please dive into that because there's plenty more. And I'm very sure this will not be the last time we have him on. So that concludes another episode of Producer Head. This has been Toru, and in a way, so are you. So much. Peace. That was Cryptic 1, unpacking the journey behind Beats Table. This film captures the human stories of producers in a way rarely seen, and it's only the beginning of what he hopes will become a full series. If you want to support, follow Beats Table on Instagram and keep an eye out for screenings. And as always, stay tapped in with Producer Head for more conversations like this. Peace. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. This helps Producer Head find its place and its people. Without you, there is no Producer Head. Thanks again for tuning into Producer Head. Subscribe and join our community over at producerhead.substack.com so you never miss an episode. Substack subscribers receive exclusive access to the bi-weekly podium, a curation of my favorite discoveries on and offline over the past week. You'll also get access to Producer Head Bars, where I share the best of what's been shared with me to help you and other producers in our community grow. The podium and Producer Head Bars are designed to provide immediate inspiration and direct application in your creative process. So, subscribe at producerhead.substack.com to receive real inspiration and ideas you can use to elevate your own process today. If you care for the craft, get your exclusive access at producerhead.substack.com. This episode was co-produced, engineered, and edited by Matthew Diaz. Big thank you to him. From Producer Head, this is Toru, and in a way, so are you. Peace.